Good morning. Now, before I start, I'd like to ask if anyone can recognize this map. The hint is some masks. I see some people wearing some masks. So it's the coronavirus. And everyone here has heard of the novel coronavirus outbreak, I believe. As of the 7th of February, the number of worldwide confirmed cases have reached about 31,500 and the death toll up to 600. And these are the facts and figures for yesterday. Now, can you imagine, in just 2 weeks, the number of infected cases has spiked up by more than double, and the death toll by more than 1,500. But these numbers are not just going to stop here. The virus will only continue to spread and spread. And the numbers continue to increase until we can truly find a cure and make counter-preventive measures. Fortunately, in an attempt to bring this outbreak under control, the WHO, or the World Health Organization, is convening a global research and innovation forum to mobilize international action. But the WHO director said that still there are questions we need answers to and tools we need developed as quickly as possible. As quickly as possible, which means that we would need to act even faster. We would need to accelerate the progress. But how can we accelerate this progress? How do we do this? Well, let's take a look at what he said before. Keep these two things in your mind. First, the questions and answers, and second, the tools to be developed. But the coronavirus outbreak is just one of the countless crises our world faces every single day. And despite efforts being made towards global issues, many still remain unresolved until today. First and foremost, poverty is an inescapable issue for nearly all developing countries. Second is hunger, leaving 1 in every 4 people malnourished. And in fact, inadequate nutrition contributes to nearly half of all child deaths worldwide. Third, people lack water, a necessity essential for survival. And a third of the world's population risk disease by not having adequate sanitation. Education is also another major issue, especially prevalent in developing countries. And because of this, there's a gender inequality, as women would have far less educational opportunities than men. And in addition, over the past century, there has been rapid environmental decline as deforestation, pollution, overfishing, and other man-made climate change remain. The global grand challenges have been created with 7 UN SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, that also align to the global issues mentioned before, such as deforestation or quality education. And their mission is to tackle our planet's most urgent problems using exponential technologies. But now, to achieve their goal, there are many small steps that need to be taken. And it's not uncommon for failure. However, the mission of the global grand challenges is to turn these ideas into reality as an open call for innovative ideas to solve some of the world's biggest problems. Now, I do understand that solving poverty, solving hunger, things that have been here for the past millennia, but still remain unresolved, they do sound kind of impossible, right? But I'm not talking about eradicating these problems in just 10 days, but we can look toward the time frame of several hundred years. And if we do take the necessary actions, then we will be able to see results. Now, combining the two missions that the global grand challenges aim for, we get this: an open call for innovative ideas to tackle our planet's most urgent problems using exponential technologies. This means that first, we'll need innovative ideas, and second, the exponential technologies to make this work. But for the first part, how do we get the most innovative of ideas most efficiently? Now recall the two things that the WHO director has said before. First, the questions and answers, and second, the tools to be developed. And we actually find that we can align his methods so that we get this. So we can actually use questions and answers to get innovative ideas. But why questions and answers? And why are they so important? Well, a recent article written by Warren Berger has challenged assumptions. How brainstorming questions and not ideas spark creativity. He highlighted the increasing importance of developing questions rather than generating ideas. Yes, brainstorming has developed a noteworthy reputation all over the world. Schools use it and companies use it. But when groups of people are thrown together and expected to come up with original ideas, there's often too much pressure, which results in the lack of original ideas instead. So if brainstorming doesn't work, then why not use questions? While this may sound counterintuitive, because who needs questions? We all need answers. It actually does allow people to formulate lots of questions around the topic or issue, which would then allow them to grasp a better understanding around the problem and lead to a deeper analysis. This would then yield smarter ideas on how to tackle the problem. In addition, while brainstorming is typically dominated by a few big idea people, questioning exercises, on the other hand, seem to have more across-the-board participation, mainly because they're much easier to think up of and they're judged much less harshly than ideas. In fact, Hal Gregerson, the executive director of the MIT Leadership Center, actually uses question storming sessions with his clients. But he first tried this idea out 22 years ago. And he said that at that time, he was in a brainstorming session in one of his MBA sessions. And they were discussing an important problem that many companies struggled with: how to build a culture of equality in a male-dominated environment. Now, clearly, this was an issue that many of the students cared about, but they felt very uninspired by the ideas that they were generating. And soon, the energy level in the room slowly dissipated and eventually hit rock bottom. Hal Gregerson, he glanced at the clock, and then he decided that he had to move on to a new starting point. So he said, "Everyone, actually, let's just forget about finding answers for today and come up with questions. Let's see how many we can make in the remaining time we have." And so they did. The students threw out questions, and he scribbled them on the chalkboard. He was surprised to find out that they could come up with so many questions in just little time, and they came up with questions that even challenged the basic assumptions that they had. Even when the students left the room, they were still talking excitedly about the few questions that they made. There was so much more to discuss because the discussion had opened up new, unexpected pathways for potential solutions. Amazing, isn't it? But now, let's take it a step further. The next part is exponential thinking through the tools to be developed. Now, as humans, we tend to think in a straight line. We take the first step, and when we're done, we continue on to the second step, and we take the third step, and take the next step, and continue on until we reach the endpoint right over there. But why do we do this? Why do we take this kind of method? Well, it's because it seems like the most simplistic, most systematic, isn't it? But this type of thinking, linear thinking, can it really survive in this era of change, technological change? With technology growing at an unprecedented pace, at an exponential rate, can we as humans really keep up? Can we adapt? Think about it. The previous generation has so much more trouble working around with computers and phones and drones than teenagers do nowadays. So if linear thinking does not work as effectively, then what kind of method should we use? Well, here's a clue. Technology, as I've said before, has been growing at an exponential rate. And these technologies are exactly what we call exponential technologies. Their power or speed doubles every year, but their cost is actually halved. Artificial intelligence, virtual reality, digital biology and biotech, nanotech, medicine, autonomous vehicles, and robotics. All these exponential technologies, which are shaping major industries in all aspects of our lives, they all revolve around exponential thinking. But if exponential thinking would really give us such favorable results, then why haven't many major industries switched to it, or at least tried it out? Well, actually, they did. Some did. But can you see a problem here? Exponential thinking, it starts out really slow because it's actually not that easy. There's no straight line from your start point to end point. There's no step-by-step plan. But it's actually because of this that it actually removes some of the disruptive stress that comes with linear thinking and reveals new opportunities. It actually allows people to become more comfortable with uncertainty and more ambitious with their vision. But because it starts out slow, there aren't immediate results. And businesses and companies, without immediate results, and when they're impatient, they would resort back to linear thinking. But if we can actually go beyond that point, we can expect that disruption. And in fact, Google actually uses exponential thinking to reach its ambitious vision of organizing the world's information, and Facebook also uses exponential thinking to make the world more connected. Now, moving on to my third point, it's actually a bit different, but it was one that I realized from a problem back in 2014. And I attended this robotics center, and that year, together with my friends, we joined a competition called First Lego League. And our team decided that for that year, we wanted to help the underprivileged gain some valuable experiences, some new opportunities. And so we provided some hands-on activities for the children to work around with and engage in robotics. And we were glad to see that they were actually excited. They were passionate about it. But this told us one thing. It meant that it was their first time. It meant that without these activities, they wouldn't have even known that robotics ever existed. And without these activities, they wouldn't have even built interest in these fields. But without utilizing everyone we can, how can we further maximize the growth of technology and innovation? How can we accelerate its pace? But we also added in some STEM skills, STEM activities into the project. And at the time, it was actually a relatively new concept, but it's now considered to be the key for a successful future. In fact, research has shown that students who study STEM are more creative, flexible, and are able to take advantage of the changes in their workplace and workforce of the future. So I believe that we should first provide some hands-on activities for children to build interest in these fields, and then use STEM activities to further cultivate the thinking flexibility of their mindset. There are countless global issues all over the world, and more so than we can probably ever count. But we have hope. We've seen how far technology has taken us in this past decade, and new phenomenal inventions are constantly evolving. But in order to further maximize the growth of technology and innovation, I believe that we will need to utilize several strategies. First, when we find it difficult to come up with innovative ideas, why not take a breather from brainstorming ideas and instead try to come up with questions? The next step would be to shift from linear thinking towards exponential thinking. But we aren't utilizing everything to the max yet. To do that, I believe that we must first provide some hands-on activities to build interest in these fields, and then provide some STEM activities for them to cultivate their thinking flexibility. So I would like to conclude that with these three strategies, we will be able to further maximize the growth of technology and innovation. And if we are able to take this initiative, humanity will be able to take the next step forward towards the future. Thank you.